Miranda, let me go your way next. Best in show. What do you say?
All right, gonna start with my honorable mentions first. Surprising for me was the Crossfire X campaign. Obviously, Remedy is doing that, and I love what they do. So I was actually pretty surprised to see how drawn in I was to that. I didn't really care about that game too much before, and now I'm like, oh, you have my interest. I want to see what this is. I always like seeing first-person shooter campaigns and seeing like how they can push boundaries with storytelling, because I feel like some of them get kind of rinse and repeat or a little generic. There's only so much you can do whenever you're doing a first-person shooter, and I think finding more innovative ways to have like cool stories is really what I want to see. And so I think we're getting a lot more of those recently, and this could be part of that group, and I'm excited to see more about it. So that was one of my honorable mentions. The other one is Everwild. Still not super sure what that game is, but it sure is pretty, and I do like animals. So I do love that, like the idea. It's like you're working together to maybe like better your environment and just have a good thing. And Paris, as you mentioned earlier, that Studio Ghibli feel. I feel like environmentalism is such a big thing for Ghibli, and like they just want to make sure that it's like we have to protect this environment, we have to protect this world. Like it's really important. Like there's so much beauty in nature that we can shine on, and that's what this game is. It's like, let's look at how we coexist here, and like look at these beautiful animals, and they're so imaginative, and I just love that whole aspect of it, and like that adventure skew to it too seems really neat. So very much looking forward to seeing more of that. And then as for my best in show, I think Games Pass is a great answer, but for me, it has to be Halo. Like, I think I'm just so excited, you guys. I really love how the pilot just humanizes the Chief a little bit. Like, kind of is like a good contrast of like, don't tell me to do, guy. Like, are you even listening to me? Like, the Chief is, as we know him, is like, this like soldier who's just kind of like out of touch with a lot of things. Like, his only real companion for so long was Cortana, and like, she's got some stuff going on right now. So like seeing him get a new partner in crime essentially is really cool. And I'm really excited to see what their dynamic is. And I think that story part's going to be really neat. And all we know of him right now is the pilot. Something that we also went into like our story bit, Ryan, that you reported on, was that the pilot's name is actually pretty important, and we don't know what it is. Or I guess like, or somehow like him exposing his name is important to the story somehow. So they just wouldn't tell us what he's named. So I think that's like really interesting to see how they're framing that already. And I don't know. I obviously love Halo, so I have to give that a best in show. And I of course wish we could have seen more of the gameplay, but I'm really happy we got what we did.
Yeah, I'll say I'll be totally honest. Like, Grounded is a game that I have had very little excitement for up to date. I mean, it's not. I'll just be honest. It's not what I'm looking for from Obsidian. But I have to say, it's the way that they really leaned into the kind of almost self-deprecating, like, hey, we know this isn't a big RPG, which they were able to do since they did show off a big RPG elsewhere in the conference right afterwards, in fact. So I think Grounded, I'll tell you, if they're able to work a cool narrative into that game, it's slowly starting to win me over. So that I thought was pretty cool. And then I want to mention Stalker 2, which is a game that if you've played it on PC, it's one of the more revered first-person shooters that in somewhat recent years on PC. And Stalker 2's been quietly in development for a while, so I'm really eager to see this one because I am a sucker for narrative-focused, immersive first-person shooters, and this could totally fit the bill. But as far as my best in show, I'm not going to stray too far from the group here. I do 100% agree that the answer is Xbox Game Pass. I mean, I arguably, you could say Microsoft, up until today, hadn't done a good enough job of just beating people over the head with how great this service is and how much you get with it for the asking price each month. But I think today's showcase it served complementary achievements and goals, and that the rub against Xbox has been, well, there aren't enough games. Well, guess what? They just showed a ton of games, diverse games, interesting games, new IPs, revivals of old stuff, and everything that first party does goes into Game Pass. And then they even showed off some of the great third party stuff that are console launch exclusives that are going into Game Pass too. So it really is like, I guess if you added up the suggested retail prices of everything you just saw in that hour-long showcase, turns out you only have to pay like $10 per month. And I mean, I don't know how many months it would take you to play all 20 something of those games, but that was really a big coup for Microsoft. But I'm going to go with Miranda for my proper game pick, and Halo Infinite is the MVP. It's the real MVP for me.